I am Anna Spier, and this is my Keystone You Voted Red, I Voted Blue, a romantic comedy screenplay about cross-party relationships. And my project advisor was Barry Brodsky. So to start out, I kind of want to give you an idea of what it's like to visit my mom's side of the family. So my mom is very liberal, but her family is decidedly not. So every time we visit, she kind of pulls us aside and reminds us that if anyone starts talking about politics, we are not to engage because it's only going to start a fight. So we settle into my grandma's house as conservative talk radio plays in the background, and like clockwork, we're all talking about politics and we're all arguing about politics. This goes on just long enough for us to come to our senses and realize we shouldn't be talking about this. So we stop until next time when the cycle repeats itself. So bottom line is right now, politics can feel like a really off limits topic with the people that we love. So we suffer through the holidays and remember that we don't choose our family. We do, however, choose the people that we date. And despite having disagreements, relationships between people in different parties are still happening. We saw this with Kellyanne and George Conway, Mary Madeline and James Carville, and most recently, Giannina and Damien from reality television masterpiece Love is Blind. But how does this work exactly? There's a number of issues that are definitely going to crop up when you're in this kind of relationship. Publications have talked about this, from the New York Times to Cosmo, to Time, and our friends over at WebMD who have decided to branch out and talk about this. So I wanted to look at the question, how does political affiliation affect romantic relationships? This is a question that a number of people have had, but I found that there aren't a lot of romantic comedies that use politics as a central source of conflict. So I wanted to investigate this question and use my findings to write a romantic comedy screenplay. So for my research, it's important to remember that since I am writing a screenplay and not an academic paper or report or anything like that, I wasn't looking for any data-driven conclusion with this research. I more wanted to find information that would help me create a story that had some basis in fact. So I spoke to a mix of Democrats and Republicans, a mix of who were men and women between the years of 18 and 23 over phone, email, or in person. So these subjects went to Boston University, Texas A&M Kingsville, and Rice. So what I did is I asked them a series of really broad questions, such as how they were introduced to politics, whether or not they thought a cross-party relationship was possible, and issues that they cared about and wouldn't be willing to compromise on if they were in this sort of relationship. So I sort of wanted to use those broad questions to start a really casual, informal conversation so they wouldn't feel as confined by my questions and were able to just tell me how they felt. And this worked really well. These are the responses I got from two different participants who, when I asked if it mattered how their significant other voted. So that just kind of gives you an idea of how I spoke to people. Okay. So my research gave me a couple of main takeaways that I wanted to use to apply to my plot and my characters. So one, politics are going to come up. A lot of people I talked about said that they discuss politics so frequently, it seemed really unlikely that their significant other wouldn't know how they felt about them. Two, people who had been in cross-party relationships believed that they could work. People who had said that they had discussions with their significant others about their differences and kind of just like put it all out on the table before promptly ignoring it again and just accepting that they were different. Three, people were less willing to compromise on issues tied to their values. So for example, the people who said they were Republican because they were religious said that they weren't willing to compromise on an issue like abortion. And four, you can't change someone's mind, but it's good to open up a dialogue about your differences. Okay. So I was able to apply these takeaways to the plot of my screenplay. So before I get into that, I would like to give you a synopsis of what I wrote. So it is the fall of 2016 in Boston. Mallory is confident of two things. Her boss will give her a staff writing position at the Dweller magazine, and Hillary Clinton will win the election. Neither of these things happen. So when her editor says her articles don't feel nonpartisan enough, Mallory decides to find and befriend a Republican to escape the echo chamber. Her search leads her to Rob, a financial analyst who is surprisingly likable, enough so that she chooses to look past his party affiliation when he asks her out. So Mallory and Rob attempt to make their relationship work as the ups and downs of Trump's first year in office prevent them from ignoring their differences. So first, I decided to go the more traditional route when I was deciding on my characters. So I had a male and female main character. Our female main character is a Democrat and our guy is a Republican. So then I had to decide how liberal or conservative to make them, because if I put them too far on either extreme, it would be like trying to facilitate a relationship between Bernie Sanders and Rush Limbaugh, which doesn't seem plausible for a number of reasons. So in terms of where to put them on this political spectrum, Like I said, I can't make them too extreme or they'll just automatically dislike each other and not really want to talk to each other. But if I make them too close to independent, they'll probably get along too well and only have issues related to whose turn it is to do the dishes, which is great for them, healthy relationship, but not great for conflict and not a great source of comedy. So I had to put them somewhere in the middle, and that way they'd have enough in common that they could actually have a relationship, but enough that was different about them that they would have issues down the line. So I decided to make their friends and family members who might be more opposed to this relationship far more to the left or more to the right. That way I could heighten enough conflict between them to get a B story out of that relationship. So these are the character breakdowns I decided on. We have Mallory, who's in her 20s. She's from New Hampshire, and her father is a professor of gender studies at a small liberal arts college. So she really wants to be promoted to a staff writing job at the magazine where she works so she can write about politics and current events and the issues that she cares about. Rob, meanwhile, is also in his mid-20s, and he's a financial analyst from Miami, Texas, which is a conservative oil town on the Panhandle. So he's working in Boston now. So the first takeaway was that politics are going to come up. So it seems really unlikely that someone with Mallory's background would want to talk to, let alone date someone like Rob. So I had to find a way to force them together. So having Mallory's boss tell her that she needs to kind of get out of the echo chamber gives Mallory motivation to hunt down a Republican and befriend one. So this gives her a reason to talk to Rob, who's someone she knows that she doesn't agree with, and that lets them get to know each other. 2, people who had been in a cross-party relationship believe that they could make it work. So at this point, things get out of hand. Mallory and Rob like each other and decide to give the relationship a try. So at this point, I had the characters have a discussion about the things that they disagreed about, but when they saw that there was an argument on the horizon, they decided to just stop talking about it pretty much permanently to kind of avoid argument and just maintain what they have. So in spite of this, Mallory really wants to talk about these things and really wants Rob to change his mind, which is something that she grapples with, especially as 2017 rolls out and all of the events of 2017 just remind her of how different they are. Okay. 3, people were less willing to compromise on issues tied to their values. So I really wanted to bring out the value-related differences. So to do this, I had Mallory go to Texas to spend Thanksgiving with Rob's family. So here, Mallory is exposed to Rob's background because his family is really conservative and Christian, and their differences become even more clear. And when Mallory and Rob's brother-in-law argue about Trump, Rob defends her. And in a way, Mallory wants to believe that he defends her because he's changed his mind about politics to a certain extent because of her. But not talking about issues and agreeing on issues aren't the same thing, which brings us to takeaway 4. You can't change someone's mind, but it's good to open up a dialogue about your differences. So Rob wasn't defending Mallory because he agreed with her. He was defending her because he cares about her. So at this point, they realized that they're too different for this to work in the long term, and they amicably part ways. So since they hadn't been talking about their differences, like the way that the people I interviewed said that you need to have a conversation about it, they're kind of blindsided when they realize how different they actually are, which causes a great divide for them. Yeah, so in conclusion, relationships are something that are really on a case-by-case basis. So my decision to have the characters not stay together was a result of the conversations I had with people, but also my own personal take on the question a little bit. I kind of went with the idea that politics are so personal right now that choosing not to talk about them is kind of like ignoring the issues that you care about, your values, and having to compromise on who you are as a person, which is a really big sacrifice to make. So yeah, also just like creative license, I guess. But this type of relationship is definitely possible for some people, but depending on the person, some differences are just too big when you're looking at a relationship that you want to last in the long term. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you, guys.